So when I got there was family everywhere. The mom was upset. You know, officers were all over the place, and we had a lot of the crowd was getting quite angry, because why is there so many officers just hanging around? Why aren't they going after the guy? What's going on here? And I really thought, man, and they kind of said, can you do anything with that, with those people?
Suffering, pain, sickness, we can't escape it. And when we go through it, or somebody we know goes through these difficult times, it's emotional turmoil. It's often, why would a good God, how could there be a good God that would allow this to happen? And we speak today to Scott Montgomery, who's been through not being able to have children and rub shoulders with people going through all sorts of tragedy in his role as a police chaplain. And we speak to him and hear why he's been able to maintain a faith in God through all of this. We really look forward to sharing with you this episode with Scott Montgomery. I'd like to start with probably the big question and then work our way down. So
Sure.
People wonder, why do bad things happen to good people? How would you answer that question?
Again, kind of a universal question. It's been asked for many, 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 many years. Why do bad things happen to good people? Of course, we know that, God never intended bad things to happen to anybody. His plan was that it would all be good for all of us. But then, sin comes into the process, as we know in the story of Adam and Eve, and sin changed the whole plan, the whole dynamic of the plan. And because of, sin and the nature of man, things change and values change. And I really don't, God, even today, he does not want bad things to happen to anybody, good people, or what we would call bad people. But he also created us creatures of will. He gave us free will. We can make our own decisions. and what we have, the results of our own decisions, of course, is what we see. And good decisions, things are good. Bad decisions, bad outcomes. So I think that I feel what happens is that a lot of good people make bad decisions. A lot of bad people make bad decisions. Again, because we don't take enough time to really focus on, or have a relationship where we can say, well, how would God want me to do this, as opposed to how would I want to do this? When I walk in my understanding, it's not going to be anywhere near to what God had in mind for me. Proverbs is very clear about that. Trust in the Lord with all your heart. Lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways, it's a big word. Acknowledge him, and he's going to do what? He'll direct your path. He'll make it straight. He'll give you the blessings he wants. We have to align ourselves with God's blessings. And so when we make, like I said, good people making bad decisions, bad result. It's unfortunate. Then they have to work with that. So
that makes a lot of
your
sense.
experience with that. That kind of puts it all in a nutshell. Yeah.
And I guess other people's decisions sometimes impact other people. It might not be their own decision.
Absolutely, it's not necessarily that whatever the outcome's not just going to affect them, but you're right. It affects anybody that they might be connected to in a negative way. Children, or husbands, spouses, or whatever. Even co-workers, friends. Yeah, you make a bad decision, it can affect a lot of people besides just you. That's for sure.
Perhaps someone, though, might have experienced like a health problem, and they might have done their best to live a healthy life as best they can, and they look at other people who don't take care of their health.
Yeah.
And they might ask, why did I get this cancer or this problem when I've been doing my best? How would you come to terms with that?
Yeah, again, very good question. Rain falls on the just and the unjust. When it comes to issues with disease, we know that God is the ultimate healer. And I'm thankful for doctors and medicine and procedures and the things that are out there. But when people do get, cancer is always the big one, and there's a lot of other things that come along down the path. Again, a lot of it can be related to environmental issues. It can be related to, you can eat right, sleep right, do everything right, but again, we're still subject to everything that's around us, everything that we see, touch, feel, eat, smell. And, it's like a flu epidemic. Why did I catch the flu? Well, because you got exposed, and that's the way that works. I've seen miraculous healings with people with cancer because, again, God is the healer. They've gone to the Lord and they've said, look, this is the Lord. I'll do what the doctors want me to do, but ultimately, they only put me in a position to be healed. Doctors don't heal people.
Yeah.
If I break my arm, I go to the doctor, he'll put it in a cast. He puts me in a position for God to do what God can do, and that is to knit my bones back together. Doctor doesn't do that. God does that. And I think we really need to always keep our mind on that. It's unfortunate, obviously, when we have loss of life due to, sickness and things that are maybe premature. And that's the big question, why?
Yeah.
Why? If I had the answer to that question, I would have to have a office with a big waiting room. Because
I guess the real question is, how do we stop these things happening? We have a tragedy strike. How do we stop that from keeping us from God? How do we stop that from making us blame God? And how do you come to terms with a tragedy that doesn't seem
like it should happen? Well, the best thing, again, is a lot of times, we know good can come out of everything. It won't make any sense at the moment why something happens, and I really have to encourage people that I work with, in situations I work through, that being patient with God is hard because we're very impatient people. Waiting on God is hard. But if you wait long enough, inevitably something will come out of this. If you look for it, that'll help you to understand that it wasn't meant to do you total harm, but there's something there to be learned from a tragic situation, maybe. And the answer varies in multitudes of ways. But I do know that I've had people come back to me later to say, I finally got it. I finally understand. But they've taken the time. I said, you really need to really seek the Lord, and if you don't have a relationship with the Lord, well, we need to start there and develop that and realize that, His ways are so far above our ways. We can't understand them. But relationship is about us being open to take time to ask, but also take time to listen to what He has to say, and then watch to see what am I supposed to learn from this? What good can come out of this?
Sounds like you've probably had some personal experience with learning all of this. Is there something you could share where you've grappled with something? And
well, yeah, yes. Well, with my wife and I, we high school sweetheart and all that sort of thing, and then of course college, and I went. I'm a Vietnam era vet, so I went in the military, came home from the service, and we got married. Started, we're working, all that sort of thing. I had a business, and she was working full time, and we never really purposed to have children, but if children became part of the mix, it was fine with us. We were down with that. About 17 years of marriage, and we were childless, and again gone through all the procedures with the doctors and testing and all these kind of things to try to identify what's the problem, and really never came up with if there was really any problem. So we just kind of had to say, well, it's just at this point we were not born again Christians when we got married. We were raised Catholic, both of us. in the Catholic Church, so we understand God and all that sort of thing. But but now we are into a born again experience and have a different relationship with the Lord than we had before. And so we said, look, it's all in the God's hands. We just, we got to trust God that He has a plan for this, and the barrenness, has a plan. Of course, we read throughout the Bible different issues with women that were barren, and of course, what finally became of all of that when God opened their womb again. Well, what happened through all of this was a little girl came our way through some local folks that we knew we were childless, and she was 4 going on 5. Her name's Taryn, and they said she was available to be adopted or to go into foster care. And my wife came home one day from work. I was already home, and she said to me, there's this little 4-year-old going on 5 that they're looking to have her go up to adoption. Would you be interested? And immediately I was just at peace in my spirit, and I said, yeah, what do we do? And she said, well, they'd like to bring her over and we can meet her and, and have her for the weekend if we'd like and get to know her. And so we went through that process, and of course we became foster parents while we were going through the adoption process with her. It was a difficult process because her biological mother was in and out of incarceration situations, and so it was hard to get her nailed down. But it took 2 years, and so finally became final, and we have now a daughter going on, she's going on 7 at that point in time, Taryn, and she's going on 39 now, and of course married, and has given us 2 beautiful little granddaughters. But what we saw is, what a blessing she has been. We can't even scratch the surface as to how blessed we have been because of the fact that we went through this process of no children, but we would have never had Taryn. See? Yeah. So that's how God works. Yeah. And boy, I'll tell you, it's amazing. We encouraged other couples that were having the same kind of difficulties, and they're going, no, you guys got the good deal, and we're going, you got it, you're Christians, you know the Lord, you can trust God. And a couple of them, one of them did, and had a very good experience as well. So, God's purposes are just, you just have to trust in them, So we're very blessed, yeah.
Do you think there's something in that time of waiting that made the results all the more special?
During the time of what?
The time of waiting. Do you think that added to how?
The 17-year span. Well, in that time we were so busy with ourselves and our plan and what we were doing, we weren't really focused on it on a daily basis. It was like kind of on the back burner. It was always there, but we weren't pursuing it aggressively. And then, of course, I think the hardest time was the 2-year process to get it finalized from foster care to her actually being named a Montgomery. Because any time during that period of time, the mother could have taken her back.
Really? So it was emotional ups and downs.
Oh yeah, there was some roller coaster rides there. But again, we still had to say, look, if this is God's plan, it's God's plan. We just got to relax in it. We can't be all uptight and paranoid about what might happen. And so we just kept pursuing it that way. That she, God wants her to be in our family, and she'll be in our family. And that's that. And there we are. Yeah. So great experience, unbelievable experience. Yeah.
So in your time as a police chaplain, and even I guess as your time in the Vietnam War, how have you learned about how suffering and evil plays out as in God's plan working alongside?
Oh, during the war?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I was drafted, so I was kind of at the mercy of the system. I was in college when I was drafted. Right, yeah. So I didn't put in for my college deferment because I thought, well, I might as well just, when they call me, I'll go. And so I went, and I had no idea what I was going to do or where I was going to end up, or most guys were going straight into infantry at that time. 1968 was a very bad year it was a big Tet Offensive in Vietnam. And so when I got out of basic training, they told me that they wanted me to go to Warrant Officers Flight School, and I said, well, I'm just a draftee, and they said, well, you'll have to extend. I said, well, I don't want to do that. And I didn't really want to I wanted to become a helicopter pilot, but I didn't. It wasn't a good occupation in Vietnam. And so anyway, I ended up going into the military police corps. So I ended up in the military police corps. And then, my first duty station was at one of the top installations in the United States. It was called ForceCom. It was Army Forces Command headquarters. It was all brass, generals and whatnot. And so we were an honor guard unit. Well, I ended up coming down on orders twice while I was there to go to Vietnam, but weird things just would happen, and I'd get called back, and I'd get called back, and I just go, well, I don't know, God, I don't know what's happening here, but I'll just keep doing what I'm doing. And then the last time I got called to go, I went over to overseas replacement, and I didn't have enough active duty time left to go.
Right.
So they said, they call it being short. They said, you're too short.
Okay.
Go back to your company and finish your service time. So I never left the United States. I have lots and lots of friends that we all kind of, served about the same time. I lost a lot of really close friends during the war that died in Vietnam. I have several very close friends that came back that are disabled because of PTSD and that sort of thing. That they're still good friends of mine. I still see them quite often. But that whole situation again, suffering loss and then trying to figure out why God sees you all the way through something like that, pretty much unscathed. I mean, I had a broken ankle and I had a broken arm, and that's a couple of things that happened, but basically, out of harm's way. Why?
Why?
See,
Yeah.
Why?
Did you grapple with why you got through that?
Yeah, quite a bit of that. And so I'm always thinking, okay, well, there's a reason. I mean, there's got to be a purpose behind it. I was not a born again Christian at the time. I was just doing my thing. So trying to connect those dots. But I mean, I could just see time after time that he had his hand on me, And when I checked out of college, because I was still in my semester when I got drafted, I had to go around and get signed out of school. When I checked out, I was walking across the quad, heading back to my car. I was all done. And I remember saying this to this day. I said, I just looked up, I stopped in the middle of the quad, I looked up, I said, God, you see me through the next 2 years, I'll do anything that you want me to do. So watch what you say.
Yeah, right.
And, and he called a marker in on me. He really did.
Yeah.
When the salvation thing was kind of coming my way. And I still remember those words. And nobody was with me at the time. I was by myself.
Really? Yeah. You felt like God heard that?
God was with me. He heard me. It's the only one that had to hear me. Yeah, so through all that, he had it. And I've always felt his presence in my life. Always. He's always had his hand on me. Yeah.
How did that lead to becoming a chaplain in the police?
The police department situation had to do with I was, pastoring. I'd been pastoring since '82, so this would have been in '97 that I went to the academy for the law enforcement chaplaincy. One of the lieutenants in the department started the chaplaincy up, and he was a part of my church. And so when he said he was going to start the chaplaincy up, he asked several. You had to be in licensed ministry to be in law enforcement chaplaincy. And so he was asking several of us if we'd be interested. And so he asked me if I'd be interested. And so I said, okay. So I went to the academy and whatnot and got, graduated and got sworn into the police department and started my work. That's how that came about, and started my work with the chaplaincy back then, and just if you want opportunities to really service people, to minister, which means serve, and to serve not just your church, but to serve your community. The chaplaincy was the way to do it, because we were available. There was 6 of us on the squad, and we were available to every law enforcement and first responder agency in the whole county. And so that entails about 7 towns, a university, and that's fire, sheriff's department, police department, and ambulance service. Any of those people can access us. We're on call. We rotate Friday to Friday. So when I go on call, it's from Friday to Friday, 24 hours. You're on call for 24 hours a day. Right. And so dispatch will call if you get somebody wants you someplace, dispatch would call us, and we go out and suit up, get the cruiser, and go. Yeah. So that's how that got started. Yeah.
So I guess you'd encounter a lot of people going through things. What do you feel that you could offer? What was the greatest thing you had to offer when somebody came to you?
I've thought about that one, Tom, for quite a bit, because I don't think there's anything that I have not experienced in 24 years. Is there one that's greater than the other? I finally came to the conclusion that no, there really isn't one. They all impact you different ways, whether it's a line of duty death of an officer, which I've gone through 4 of those, or whether it's crib death, or a homicide, suicide. All of these things are tragic things, and they all hit you a little bit different, and so you deal with them all just a little bit different. But mainly what we have to keep focused on is that this whole situation isn't about me. It's about whoever I'm working with, and trying to bring them comfort, or bring them direction, or bring them understanding, whatever it might happen to be. The majority of the people that I work with are not connected to a church. The ones that are, that's wonderful. I contact, are you connected with a church? Yes, I am. Which one is it? Do you want me to call your pastor? Yes, I do. Blah, blah, blah. So we'll get their leadership involved. And if they're not, well, then we're there to walk them through the whole process, whatever it might be. But we have to maintain the fact of letting them know that we depend on a source that's much bigger than we are. We're trained, we know how to deal with grief and that sort of thing, but we have to just keep kind of steering them towards the fact that, if we can pray with you, can I pray with you? Some say yes, some say no. All right, well, do you mind if I pray for you? Well, you can pray for me, I just don't want to pray with you, And then we have another thing that we're taught. It's just called ministry of presence. In other words, when we get to the scene, I can ask the lead officer, here I am, what do you want me to do? Where do you need me? And they'll tell me, right now I don't really need you for anything, but I want you here.
Yeah. Right.
So we just go find a spot where we're visible, and we just stand there.
I guess we can underestimate that.
Yeah.
That presence.
Yeah, presence, just your presence, just be here. And then, and then it kind of goes from there. But again, like I said, every situation has to be, there's no 2 of them the same. They might involve the same unfortunate demise, whatever it might be, but the people involved are not the same. And so that's, you're constantly having, the most serious praying I ever do, is from the time the phone rings, no matter what time, 2 o'clock in the morning, whatever, I get suited up, I get in my cruiser, I call dispatch, I tell them I'm 10-8, it means I'm on duty, and from the time I head out to wherever the call is till I get there. I mean, it is, it's just you and me, Lord.
Yeah.
I need your wisdom. I need your strength. We want to bring peace where there is no peace, you know, make peace out of chaos. Sometimes you walk into a situation where it's just utter chaotic.
Yeah.
You know, family members are everywhere and it's just carrying on. And so you've got to be able to bring peace into that situation. You've got to maintain your demeanor, you know. You got to be on your toes. You got to be able to read people. So there's so many things you have to be able to do that, again, you can't do in yourself. It's impossible. Just totally impossible.
Is there a story you could tell us of a particular time where God answered that prayer on the way?
Yes, more than once. But the one, I was called out to a situation with a gang-related homicide. Young 21-year-old male that had he was in jail for a drug charge, and he was out on bail, and he was at his mom's house. Came out of his mom's house to do whatever, I don't know what, but a guy was across the street watching the house, waiting for him. He came out, the guy shot him, killed him, and of course took off. So when I got there was family everywhere. The mom was upset. You know, officers were all over the place, and we had a lot of the crowd was getting quite angry, you know, because why is there so many officers just hanging around? Why aren't they going after the guy? What's going on here? And I really thought, man, you know, and they kind of said, you know, can you do anything with those people? And I said, well, I could certainly go over and give it, you know, I'll see what I could do. And so I had to walk across the scene, go across the street to where they had it roped off. And you know, it's one of those things where I'm not quite sure exactly what I said, but whatever it was I said, the crowd just settled right down.
Really?
And just started asking reasonable questions, you know. And I said, the sooner you all kind of go home, you know, the sooner they can get about their business. You want them to catch this guy, then you need to, don't be part of the problem, be part of the solution, okay? And I got a big group together. We prayed over the crime scene line. They said thank you, and they dispersed.
Wow.
You know, but again, you know, God tells you what to do. You just have to be paying attention, you know. I mean, I could have walked over and made a big mess out of it, you know, just riled up the mob, but that wasn't what I was there for, you know. And again, like I said, we're pretty highly trained in all that, how to divert, you know, that kind of grief and anger that comes with the grief, yeah. So there's many others. I mean, we could go on way for a long time, but that probably was one where I really felt it was just instantaneous, you know. Boom. Because the next day, a couple of the officers, I was at a briefing. I went to the briefing because I wanted to see if any of the guys were having a hard time at the station, and a couple of the officers said, you know, I don't know what you said to those people, but that was great. I was like, I don't know what I said either, you know, but they said, you know, thanks, and they went about their business. So, yeah.
In your time journeying with people through grief, is there anything in particular that you see the difference between whether they get through that stronger or just stay in that and never really recover?
The majority of time, you know, the majority of times I would say they'll work through, you know, they do work all the way through it. They, you know, I still get a few Christmas cards and things like that from people that I've helped over the years with problems, and you know, they're from Canada or Oregon or, you know, whatever. People that were passing through town that had stuff that went on. So yeah, people do work through that, but helping them understand that some things just take time. You know, you just got to give it time. Your grief's not gonna leave you tomorrow. You know, it won't.
So you think that's the key? Just be patient
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. Be patient. Again, try to, if you don't have a faith base, try to establish one. Try to get into the idea. Most people are definitely open to the idea that there is a God, and that He does control a lot of things. We do have a diversity of religions in our area. Hindu and this type of thing. But we've been well versed in how their religions work too. So we know how to help them work through their processes, because they're different. They're quite different in how they deal with death. And we have a couple of officers on the force that are, I can go to this one for this and this one for that, or I can call them in and say, I could use your help over here on this situation. And so you just kind of learn from them, and next time I won't need you, but walk me through it this time. Yeah.
Just one last question. Wonder if you mind sharing a bit about your journey from just an awareness of God to what you described as being born again.
From
what was the journey? What was the
my personal journey?
Yeah.
Well, I was actually I had a business that I had gotten involved in shortly after getting married, and became a partner in the business, and we were distributors for a big dairy, one of the local big dairies that we handled wholesale distributorship, supermarkets, restaurants, all that sort of thing for a milk company, and then we did, of course, ice cream. So it was milk, ice cream, and then we started a big ice company selling ice. And so the guy I was working for, I worked my way. It's called sweat equity. Worked my way into the partnership in the business, and I was actually in the process of. It was a 10-year plan to buy him out and take over the business. And I was about 7 years into that plan when my wife came to the Lord first in '77, and I wasn't quite sure what that was all about. I wasn't. I like, well, whatever. She'd been through a lot of phases. I just figured it was another phase. But she was very serious about it. Of course, got involved in the church that we're still in to this day. Got involved, and I was working 6 days a week. So Sundays was stay at home, do the yard. She'd be at church and that sort of thing. So I was not really that excited about the whole aspect. But after a couple of years, she would ask me if I would to come if there was some special thing going on at the church, and I would go, and of course I would listen with respect. I had fear of God in me. I was raised Catholic. I was raised by nuns, so I understood the Trinity. I understood who Jesus was. I had good foundation. Went to Catholic school, so I did have a lot of respect for the whole thing. I just didn't know if I wanted to do all that. I don't have time for that. I'm in the dairy business. I'm a businessman. This is my goal, my target. It's where I'm going. And then when I did finally, it was a Palm Sunday, and I went to church with my wife, with Wanda, and I was just sitting there, and the worship was going on. I was really touched by it, because I'm really into music. I love music and that sort of thing. And I was really touched by the worship that day. And a friend of mine's wife came all the way down around and tapped me on the shoulder. And she's kind of little. And I kind of looked, but I didn't see anybody because I looked over top of her. Tapped me again. And I said, yeah. And she goes, Scott, I don't know. I don't know. She goes, it's time. It's time. And she just walked away. Well, they had an altar call, and I just went. And so that started that process. Of course, then I stayed in my business and was working in my business. And I'd gone to college to become a high school teacher. and I was a math major. And we had this church had a Christian school. So the senior pastor called me in one day, and we had a thing where people came, and it was called a presbytery. I don't know if anybody's familiar with that, but we have people in our sphere of pastors that are really gifted and in the prophetic. And so they would have this thing where they would have these guys come and call you forward, and they would pray over you and maybe have a word, you know. And so my wife and I were part of that. We went forward, and so they talked about with me that they saw me in a playground with children, they saw me coaching, they saw me doing all this school stuff. And we went home that night. I told my wife, I said, see, I don't, you know, I'm a truck driver, you know, I'm doing the dairy business thing. And she goes, well, I don't know, you know, whatever. And it haunted me for quite a while, but I kept pushing towards the business aspect. And then the senior pastor called me in one day, and he said, Scott, and he had a tape of it.
Right, yeah.
Yeah, and he said, I want to play something for you. And so he played it. And he said, the reason why I did that was because we have an opening in the high school, and we want to know if you would be willing to come on staff to be involved with our high school kids, and maybe do some coaching, and be over our music department, our worship department. I said, I'm in business,
Yeah.
you know. And he just said, well, I'm just putting a bug in your ear, you know, you work it out.
Yeah.
He said, the other thing is we cannot even start to pay you what you make now. It's impossible.
Right.
I'm like, okay. So cancel my vision, cut my income.
Yeah.
And so I went home, told my wife. She said, whatever you do, I'm with you, you know, it'll work. If it's God, it'll work. For the next week, I'm out making my runs in my truck, you know, I mean, God's just like in my face. And I'm like, what do I do with this? And I just kept hearing, you got to trust, you got to trust, you got to trust. So I went to my partner and I said, I'm going to sell out. I'm going to move on. And he said, I knew something was up. We stayed very close friends through all this, as a matter of fact. But anyway, so I walked away from that and went to work in the Christian school and in the church. It was a split salary deal. Yeah, and so that's, I just thought, I don't know, boy, Lord, you better really know what you're doing. It's the best years of my life. Tom, I can't tell you. I just, you know, working with those high school kids and coaching those kids. I coach basketball and I coach baseball and soccer. Did some work with the track team people. And then, of course, the music side of it, which was my first love. And I was a worship leader for years in our church. But, yeah, it's just, to this day, I mean, they send me pictures, they're grandparents now. You know, a lot of them were grandparents. And some of them became grandparents before I did. You know, and they used to tease me when I was only 33 years old when I went on staff with the school. And so the kids used to always, hey, old man, and they give me a bad time, you know. I said, yeah, you wait. I'll live long enough to see it. And so now I see a lot of them. I see them all the time, the kids around. Yeah, so they're really a blessing, you know, to me. And so making that decision was tough. You know, did we ever go without? No, you know, never. And of course, you know, we've traveled the world and met outrageous, great people as a result of all that. We never would have met Philip and Mandy. You know.
Sounds like that taught you what surrender really means and why you can trust God.
Yeah, and it's never, you know, when if you're going to pray and ask God for His plan for your life, it might require some sacrifices, you know, or what you think is sacrifice. But you know, He's Jehovah Jireh. He's the giver of all things, and you know, if I'm going to make these moves, I can count on him to make sure. He's my provider. It's up to him, you know. And he rebukes the devourer. You know, I mean, you end up with I had a '73 Dodge van, and of course I used it a lot with the school. You know, they use it to haul kids and go to stuff, and I think I had it till 1993.
Oh, really?
20 years, and that thing never broke down on me. I mean, it was a workhorse. And then when it finally did start acting up a little bit, well, then I was able to, you know, replace it easily. But just stuff like that, you know, and things at home, like your refrigerator lasts forever, the TV lasts, you know. It's like nowadays nothing lasts forever, but yeah. So it's really acknowledging that He provides all things, and truly giving him the thanks and the credit for your life being what it is. Yeah.
Oh, thanks, Scott. That's a really powerful story.
Well, you're welcome. You're very welcome.
Lots of wisdom there from Scott, and so appreciated how honestly he shared with us. If that's brought up anything for you, more than happy to talk with you about that. You can contact me at haventogether.com. Otherwise, leave a comment with a question or a thought you have about this episode. If you haven't heard of our podcast before, we've got a number of episodes like this that you might enjoy. Feel free to check them out. Subscribe if you're listening on YouTube for updates about our next episodes. Otherwise, look forward to sharing the next one with you, and we'll see you next time.